Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are heading deep into the rural heartland of China to uncover one of the most terrifying and distinct entities in Asian folklore. We are talking about the Jiangshi. In the West, you might call them vampires or zombies, but the reality of the Jiangshi is so much more unsettling. These are the stiff corpses, the ancestors who have not found peace, rising from their coffins to drain the life force or qi of the living. Imagine lying in bed in a house made of thin wood, completely silent, and hearing a heavy, rhythmic thudding coming from the courtyards. Thud, thud, thud. It is not footsteps. It is the sound of something heavy and stiff jumping toward your window. Stick around until the very end of the video, because after these 3 terrifying stories, I am going to break down the disturbing historical reality behind the Jiangshi legend, specifically the practice of corpse driving in the Hunan province, and why people believed these bodies could actually move on their own. Our first story comes from a viewer named Wei, who grew up in a small village in the mountains of Anhui province. He swears this happened to his uncle in the late 90s. It was the height of a humid summer when Wei's great-uncle passed away. In the village, tradition dictated that the body had to be kept in the main hall of the family home for 3 days before burial. This was to allow friends and family to pay respects and to ensure the spirit had truly departed. Wei's uncle, a man named Chen, was 20 years old at the time and was tasked with the night watch. It is a solemn duty. You have to keep the incense burning and ensure the stray cats and dogs do not come near the coffin. There is an old superstition that if a cat jumps over a corpse, the static electricity and the spirit of the animal will shock the body back into a mindless, predatory state. On the second night, a heavy storm rolled in. The electricity in the village, which was spotty at best, cut out completely. Chen was left alone in the main hall, illuminated only by the glow of the white candles and the burning incense sticks at the foot of the open wooden casket. The rain was hammering against the roof tiles, drowning out almost every other sound. Around 2 in the morning, the temperature in the room dropped. It was not a gradual cool down from the storm. It was instantaneous, like walking into a meat freezer. The candle flames turned a strange, sickly blue color and flickered violently even though there was no draft. Chen was sitting on a wooden stool, fighting off sleep, when he heard a sound that made his blood run cold. It came from inside the casket. It was the sound of fabric rustling against wood, silk rubbing against timber. He froze. He told himself it was just the wood warping in the humidity, or maybe a rat had gotten in. He stood up, holding his flashlight, which was flickering with low batteries, and shone it toward the coffin. The heavy burial robe, a traditional dark blue garment, was moving. The chest of the deceased great-uncle was rising and falling, but not like someone breathing. It was spasming. Chen took a step back. He wanted to run, but his legs felt like lead. He remembered the old warnings from the village elders. If a corpse rises, you must hold your breath. The Jiangshi are blind. They track the living by sensing their breath, their qi. Suddenly, the upper body of the great-uncle sat up. It did not bend at the waist like a living person. It levered up stiffly, like a plank of wood being raised. The face was pale, the skin pulled tight over the cheekbones, and the lips were pulled back to reveal teeth that looked longer than Chen remembered. Chen slapped a hand over his mouth and nose, pinching his nostrils shut. He backed away into the corner of the room, hiding behind a stack of wooden chairs. The thing in the coffin stood up. Again, no bending of the knees. It simply hopped out of the box, landing with a heavy, wet thud on the stone floor. Thud. It paused, rotating its entire body stiffly to the left. Thuds. It hopped again. The arms were stretched out in front of it, fingers rigid like claws. It was sniffing the air. Chen's lungs were burning. He needed to breathe, but he knew if he let out even a single gasp, that thing would be on him. The creature hopped toward the door, then stopped. It slowly turned toward the corner where Chen was hiding. It could sense the heat, the life in the corner. It hopped once, closing the distance. Chen squeezed his eyes shut, his chest screaming for air. He was dizzy, black spots dancing in his vision. The creature hopped again, landing just inches from the chairs. Chen could smell the formaldehyde and the rot. He could feel the cold radiating off the body. He was about to pass out. He couldn't hold it anymore. Just as his lips parted to gasp, a rooster crowed from the neighbor's yard. The storm had passed, and the first gray light of dawn was hitting the window. The corpse instantly went rigid. It lost its balance and fell backward, stiff as a board, crashing onto the floor and not moving again. Chen gasped for air, collapsing in a heap. When the family came in an hour later, they found Chen unconscious and the great-uncle's body lying face down on the floor. They claimed the vibrations from the thunder must have knocked the coffin over, but Chen knew. He saw the dirt on the fingernails of the corpse, dirt that wasn't there before. The second story takes us away from the village and into the city. This was sent in by a woman named Li, seeking advice, though it might be too late for that. Li was an antique enthusiast living in Beijing. She loved collecting distinct pieces from the Qing dynasty era. Last year, she found a dealer in a back alley market who was selling a complete official's robe. It was an authentic Mandarin uniform, deep indigo with intricate embroidery of a crane on the chest, indicating a high rank. The dealer seemed desperate to get rid of it. He sold it to her for a fraction of its value. Li was thrilled. She brought it home to her modern apartment on the 12th floor. She had a mannequin she used for displaying her collection, and she dressed it in the robe. She placed it in the corner of her living room, facing the sofa. For the first few days, everything was fine. But then, Li started noticing small things. She would come home from work, and the mannequin would be facing a slightly different direction. She assumed it was just the vibrations from the subway nearby, or the cleaning lady bumping it. One evening, Li was watching television. She was alone in the apartment. In the reflection of the TV screen, she could see the dark shape of the mannequin behind her. She was watching a comedy, laughing, when she noticed the reflection move. The arms of the mannequin, which she had posed at its sides, were now raised. They were pointing straight at the back of her head. She whipped around. The mannequin was standing there, arms at its sides, exactly as she had left it. She laughed nervously, blaming her tired eyes. She turned back to the TV. 10 minutes later, she heard a sound, a soft, shuffling noise on the laminate floor, like fabric dragging. She hit the mute button on the remote. The apartment was dead silent. Then, from directly behind the sofa, she heard a sharp intake of air. It sounded like a gasp, but dry, like wind rushing through dead leaves. Lee slowly stood up and turned around. The mannequin was gone from the corner. She scanned the room. Nothing. Panic started to set in. She walked toward the hallway leading to her bedroom. As she passed the bathroom, she glanced at the mirror. Standing in the bathtub, hidden behind the shower curtain with only the top of the robe visible, was the mannequin. But the hands were not plastic anymore. They were pale, shriveled skin with long, curled fingernails. Lee ran. She grabbed her keys and bolted out of the apartment, locking the door behind her. She stayed at a hotel that night. The next morning, she brought a friend with her to retrieve the item. They found the robe lying in a crumpled heap in the middle of the living room floor. The mannequin was back in the corner, naked. She sold the robe online the next day. But here is the part that keeps her awake at night. The buyer was from a city 300 miles away. A week after the sale, Lee woke up in the middle of the night. She lives on the 12th floor, remember? She heard a sound on her balcony. Thud, thud. She pulled back the curtain. There was nothing there. But on the glass of the balcony door, there were 2 muddy handprints, and on the floor of the balcony, a single bead from a Qing dynasty necklace, the same kind that was on the robe. She thinks it knows where she is. She thinks it's coming back. Our final story is perhaps the most disturbing because it involves a direct violation of a burial taboo. It comes from a man named Zhang in the Hunan province. Zhang's grandfather had died in a hospital in the city, but his dying wish was to be buried in his ancestral village, high in the mountains. This meant a long drive on winding, dangerous roads. Zhang and his father rented a van. They placed the body in a simple wooden coffin in the back. It was a long drive, and night fell while they were still hours away from the village. They were driving through a dense forest region known for heavy mists. Zhang was driving, and his father was sleeping in the passenger seat. The road was empty. The headlights cut through the fog, revealing only twisting trees and sheer drops. About halfway through the trip, the van hit a massive pothole. The vehicle slammed down hard, and they heard a loud crack from the back. Zhang pulled over to check the damage. He opened the back doors. The coffin lid had cracked open, and the wood had splintered. The grandfather's face was visible through the gap. As Jiang reached out to secure the lid, a wild civet cat leaped from the trees above. It landed directly on the coffin, hissed, and jumped over the gap in the wood before disappearing into the night. Zhang felt a pit in his stomach. He knew the lore. He quickly tied the lid down with rope and got back in the driver's seat. He didn't tell his father about the cat. He just wanted to get there. 20 minutes later, the van started to feel heavy. It was dragging, as if they were towing a massive weight. The engine whined. Then, a rhythmic banging started against the metal partition that separated the front seats from the cargo area. Bang, bang, bang. "What is that?" his father asked, waking up groggily. "Just loose cargo," Zhang lied, gripping the steering wheel so tight his knuckles turned white. The banging got harder. It started to dent the metal. Then came the scratching, the sound of fingernails tearing at the sheet metal. It was a frantic, hungry sound. "That is not cargo," his father said. He turned to look through the small glass window in the partition. His father screamed, "He's out! He's out of the box!" Zhang looked in the rearview mirror. Through the small window, he saw his grandfather, but his eyes were open, rolled back so only the whites showed. He was thrashing around the small space of the van, his body stiff, slamming against the walls. "Drive faster," his father yelled. Zhang floored it. The van skidded around corners. The thing in the back was throwing itself against the partition with inhuman force. The glass window began to crack. Spiderwebs of fractures spread across the pane. Suddenly, a pale, clawed hand punched through the glass. It grabbed Zhang's father by the shoulder. The grip was iron. His father screamed in agony as the nails dug into his flesh, drawing blood. The cold from the hand filled the cabin. Zhang slammed on the brakes, hoping the momentum would throw the creature off. The van spun, the back swinging around, and they slammed into the guardrail, teetering over the edge of a cliff. The impact threw the creature back. Jiang grabbed his father, who was bleeding profusely, and they scrambled out of the van. They ran down the road, not looking back. Behind them, they heard the van screech as it tipped over the edge and crashed into the ravine below. They walked for 10 miles to the nearest town. When they went back with the authorities the next day to recover the body from the wreck, the van was there, crushed at the bottom of the cliff. The coffin was there, smashed to pieces. But the body was gone. Zhang's father survived, but the wound on his shoulder never healed properly. It turned black and necrotic. And slowly, over the last few years, his father has changed. His joints are seizing up. He moves stiffly. He hates the sunlight. And sometimes, late at night, Zhang hears his father in the kitchen, eating raw meat from the fridge, his movements jerky and mechanical. Zhang knows it is only a matter of time before he has to do what should have been done that night on the mountain. So what is the truth behind these hopping horrors? The legend of the Jiangshi is deeply rooted in the history of the Hunan province and the practice of Jiangshi, or driving corpses in Jiangshi. In the past, if a person died far from home, their family would hire a Taoist priest to bring them back for burial. Because the mountain roads were too narrow for wagons, the priests would allegedly transport the bodies upright. The popular theory is that the bodies were tied to 2 long bamboo poles, with one priest in front and one in the back carrying the poles on their shoulders. The bamboo would flex as they walked, making the corpses appear to hop in a rhythm. The priests would travel at night to avoid frightening villagers and would ring bells to warn people to stay away. From a rational perspective, the hopping motion is also attributed to rigor mortis. In the early stages of decomposition, the muscles stiffen completely. If a body had to be moved, the limbs wouldn't bend, leading to the idea that the only way such a creature could move is by hopping. The fear of being buried alive, or the body not finding peace, created a psychological framework where any movement of a corpse, caused by escaping gases or muscle spasms, was seen as supernatural reanimation.
But does that explain the handprints on the balcony? Or the infection spreading through Zhang's father?
What do you think happened?
Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more true ghost stories from across Asia.